Today we have a 2014 Chevrolet Sonic with a 1.4 Ecotec turbocharged engine, and we have a code of a P0016. Now previously I filmed a video of us going in and cleaning out the camshaft actuator system and everything else. I put the car back together and unfortunately that didn't fix it. If I had to do it over again, I would still do the same thing. However, this car was pretty well maintained. The oil passages and everything in the system were fairly clean. I went ahead and pulled the valve cover and I noticed something wrong right off the bat. I noticed that the intake cam is not in the same position as the exhaust cam. In other words, the timing on that intake cam is off, which is what's causing our code. Now the problem with that is our timing chain system is loose, okay? It has, over some time, has developed enough slack in it to jump the camshaft at least one tooth on the sprocket. So luckily we were able to catch this. It didn't jump anymore and cause any valve damage because this is an interference engine. So I'm gonna show you guys kind of how I diagnosed this, and then we're gonna go into replacing the timing chain and getting everything back in time. We'll crank up the car and hopefully that'll be it. So let me take you over here to the engine. I already have it pulled up the top dead center. I've also done a couple other things that I'm not going to go into in the video. I removed the hood. Basically that's just for getting the camera angles I need to show you guys all this. I've also removed the passenger side wheel and the wheel liner. That's to get a better shot at the timing mark at the bottom for the pulley for the crankshaft. And I've removed the valve cover, the air box, some of the tubing. I've removed some wires and I've kind of pulled them away from the camshaft sprocket area. And I've removed one of the vent lines that go from the PCV valve system to over where the turbo is. So I've moved some of that stuff out of the way, and I suggest you do the same just because it makes working in this area a lot easier and it only takes a couple of minutes. So let me take you over to the vehicle and I'll show you why these camshafts aren't lining up correctly. Okay, I have lifted the vehicle and turned the crankshaft to top dead center, and you'll have a hole and a little slot in the timing cover that shows you where that's at. I'll show you that in a minute, but just trust me, it's at top dead center. And you got to remember too, when you're setting this to top dead center, that the piston in cylinder 1 at top dead center is on the power stroke, okay? So the crankshaft turns twice for every time that the camshafts do. So you can actually have the bottom mark lined up and the top be out 180 degrees. And how you'll know is you have these slots right here in this camshaft. And this is the special tool that we use to line all this up with. And if that slot, if you can't put this in because the slot is too low, it's not cut directly center of the camshaft, then you need to turn the engine another 180 degrees to get it up on the power stroke, okay? So we see here that this slot on the exhaust cam lines up perfectly with the tool, and that is not happening over here. So we see that slot right here is too far up this way. So we know that this should be turned a little bit more to line up with this. Okay, that's telling me definitely that this intake cam is out of time. Okay, so if you need to wiggle, you may need to wiggle the camshaft to get this tool in. And normally what I do is you have a spot right here. It's a little hexagon spot on the camshaft, and you can put an open-ended wrench there and you can wiggle that camshaft enough to get that tool to slide in. And the intake has one as well. So going over here, looking at this engine, it looks fairly clean. I mean, it's really not that sludged up, not that dirty. I don't really see a whole lot of maintenance issues, but you can see here, this timing chain is pretty loose, okay? And it's loose enough to where that camshaft ended up jumping that tooth to the rear. So what we're gonna do now is we have to take off the timing cover and go in and replace timing chains and guides and tensioner and just everything that the timing chain touches outside of these phasers here, and go ahead and make sure that we have all this set back up. And that's what I'm gonna show you next. Okay, just one thing before we go any further. You are gonna need this toolkit. They sell this on Amazon, and I'll put the link in the description. This is the 1.4 Ecotec timing tool set. This is the piece that we were just using. This is the piece that locks in the crankshaft. These are some holders for the tensioners, and the rest I don't believe we're going to be really using. So, and this right here goes into the phasers and keeps them straight for the other end of the timing, because the phasers can move around. That's how the advance and retard of the variable valve timing works. So we have to have some type of tool to hold that in. And I'll go ahead, this kit to my doors, $41 and some change. So it's not that expensive. They make some more expensive ones, and I would recommend those expensive ones if you're doing this a lot. But just for if you're just, you know, at an independent shop or something like that and you're doing this, $41 isn't too bad to pay for this set. Okay, walking underneath the car, I have it up on the lift. To get this thing in somewhat top dead center, you have a hole right here, and it is supposed to line up just about where this slot is, this little mark here is. And if you have that around in the general area, that is supposedly good enough to check the camshafts to see if they're lined up. Now, when we're doing the timing chain, what we're going to need to do is remove the service plug and put a piece of our toolkit, and it is actually right here. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus here. We take that plug out with the torque socket, and then our guide slides in there, and it holds the crankshaft still at perfect top dead center. And I'll show you what the tool is that you need here. It's this right here. So this will slide in there and fit into the crankshaft. It's supposed to be a really easy fit if you have everything done correctly. So we're going to go ahead and do that here. Okay, so this is the front of the engine. This is the AC compressor right here. This is the plug we need to take out. And it takes a T55 Torx to loosen. And when we take this out, you may get a little oil dribble. Take that out here, and then we're going to put our guide pin in out of our kit. And if we got this right, it should slide in without any force. So it's in there, and that's going to hold the crankshaft still in the top dead center spot. Now you need to make sure your camshafts are lined up as well, or at least, you know, on the right cycle, because this can actually be 180 degrees out. So got that in there, so we know now it is top dead center and the crankshaft is set where it's supposed to. So the crankshaft's not going to move. It has a hole somewhere in the crankshaft that pin slides in, and it keeps it still. I wouldn't put a whole lot of pressure as far as turning the engine against this. This is not something to hold the engine still. It's just to make sure that it's in place. Okay, so our next step after we get the bottom end timed up is we're going to support the engine with a floor jack, a piece of wood, by the oil pan to make sure that the engine doesn't fall down when we go for our next step. So I'm just going to try to stick this over here. That's just your water hose. You can move that out of the way. We're removing this engine mount right here to get a little deeper into what we're doing. It's 15 millimeters to hold this on. I'm just going to zip these off. You get an extension. You need a deep well 15 millimeter. Take these off here. This whole thing will pull up. And then we are going to need to take off this bracket right here. So you may want to jack the engine up a little where you can get in there good. You also have to do this just for a basic serpentine belt replacement. Because the serpentine belt on these runs along and gets kind of tangled up in this bracket. So there's a bolt here, there's a bolt here, and there's one underneath there you probably have to get from the bottom. And they appear to be 15 millimeter as well. When you have all these bolts loose, you will want to kind of finagle this out. You can take the bolts out fine. If not, you have to kind of work through it. And this will come out, you just lay it off to the side, and then you should have a lot more room to deal with here. Once you have the mount out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead, while the serpentine belt is on here, I'm gonna go ahead and try to loosen these up a little bit, because the serpentine belt will hold this. So that's just a quick tip here. And then the next step is gonna be actually removing the serpentine belt. Okay, on removing the serpentine belt, you have a E-Torx bolt. It is a 14, E14. You want to put it in the middle of the tensioner here, the silver tensioner, and you're going to basically pull to the right. When you do that, the belt will loosen up. Just slide it off the top and just ease it in until the belt comes off. Now we're just going to loosen these bolts that we loosened up before and take this pulley off. If you didn't loosen them up before, it's going to be hard to hold it still while you're breaking the torque free on these bolts. So what I normally do is I make sure I put it in the same position that I got it off, put the bolts in there, and then lay it on the workbench that way. Okay, real quick, before we go any further, they make a special tool to do this, but as you can tell, a special tool is a little bolt. So you need to pull down this to the right, and then you'll see a slot come through, a metal band kind of come through that slot, and it'll have a hole in it. What you need to do is put something through that hole to hold everything together, kind of like a grenade pin. And so this is what I've done here on this one. I've just taken a bolt and put it through there. It could be a drill bit, it could be an Allen key, anything like that. You just need to keep this all together. If you don't, it's going to come apart, and it's almost a nightmare to put that together off the car, okay? This is just a pro tip coming from Mr. B. Okay, so after we get the belt off and we get this pulley out of the way, we're going to need to remove the water pump, which I'm just going to drain the fluid here. We're going to need to remove these right here, these actuators. We're going to need to remove this tensioner down here. Make sure you lock it with that bolt, like I said. We need to remove the alternator, the AC compressor, and the bracket that it goes to. And we'll need to remove the pulley on the front. And that will give us access to this timing cover to get it off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, most of this stuff is pretty easy. You just take the bolts off here. You know, they're E-Torx bolts, most of them, external Torx. And so you just get those off. You want to get this whole area clean and ready for the timing cover to come off. Okay guys, I just want to go ahead and walk you through what I've done. I went ahead, this is where the AC compressor lived, hooked up to those two lines there. Now, I have the machine to pull down the refrigerant. However, if you don't, I think it's possible that you leave the AC compressor connected to those lines, and there's some 13 millimeters that hold it on. It would be right in this area here, and you can kind of push it over to get to the bolts to hold the bracket for the AC compressor on. And those are 313 millimeters as well. I also went ahead and removed the crankshaft pulley. Here it came right off. You don't need a pull or anything for that. You just need to make sure that when you pull it down, when you pull that E-Torx off, that it is still in time. You know, our timing lug right here is still in and inserted completely, so we're still at top dead center. And if you look inside, you'll see that you have like a little rotor in there, and that's where your oil pump is, and this is all the valving to your oil pump. And so we need to be careful with that. Also, it looks like we're going to have to take these bolts out, these little bolts here out of the oil pan. I looked at the instructions, and it says to actually remove the oil pan. I'm going to try to work around it and see what I can do. If we have to take the oil pan off, that's fine, but I'm going to see if I can work around it, because we just put new oil in this, and I don't want to have to drain it all out. Also, this is where the alternator was. I just took the 2 bolts out and push the alternator over. Always remember before you start any big work like this to go ahead and remove the battery terminal, the negative battery terminal, and that way if that alternator or something lays on a ground, it's not going to arc out. So always disconnect the battery. And I'm gonna go ahead and take you up top. You'll notice here that I don't have a jack underneath here because I have installed a engine brace across here. So if you're working in your driveway, you don't have a lift or something like that, you can keep this on the jack and do all this work, you know, on the ground. However, for clarity and everything else, I wanted to get it up in the air and show you guys the bottom and what I've done. And now I'm going to lower it down, and I'm gonna put it back on the jack so I can show you what's going on up top. Okay, so this is the engine brace I was telling you about. I've got 2 holding points right there for it. So this is actually bracing the engine since we took that motor mount off right here. But looking down in here, that's where the water pump came off. You have some E-Torx holding that on, and I took the thermostat off. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus here. I took the thermostat off, just let it hang out of the way. There's also a hose over here. See that hose right there that you have to take off the water pump? The lighting's so bad in here, guys, I'm sorry. But so we're pretty much ready to take the timing cover off. The solenoids are taken off there with the E-Torx. And you just got to remember on the water pump, it does have some bolts that go all the way through the timing cover. And you need to make sure that those longer bolts get put in the correct holes. So I normally mark mine on the water pump, or just do a test fit before you start tightening everything up. And so pretty much timing cover is ready to come off. Also, didn't mention this yet, but if this video is teaching you anything, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you can. It really helps me out as a YouTuber. Okay, so next thing we have to do is, now in the instructions that I read off of ShopKey, which is a program that I use, it says that we need to remove this oil pan. But what I'm gonna try to do is just take these bolts off the front of the oil pan, the first 4 bolts this way, and see if I can sneak this timing cover out. And then of course we got to take off these probably 10s and 12s, these E-Torx 10s and 12s all the way at the bottom, and get the ones on the top, and then we should be able to get this timing cover completely off, and we can see what's going on behind there. Okay, so I got all the bolts out, and what I've done, I've already got this a little bit loose. You don't want to pry in between here. The reason why, this is a sealing surface. So what I've done is I've kind of gone behind this and knocked it out with my hand enough to where I can get the timing cover off. So this is going to come straight out and up. May give you a little trouble until it comes all the way out. And it's going to leak oil everywhere because the oil pump's in here. All right. Now we've set that off to the side, and you can see our timing system. Let me get a light and I'll give you a close-up look. Okay, here is the cover off. I'll show you a couple of components here. This is one of the guides here that we'll have to take off when we do this chain. We'll be loosening these 2 bolts right here in the center of these so we can freewheel these and move them. These have their own lock plate that's in our special tools. Down here, you have the tensioner, and this is what keeps the timing tight. And I think that's what's going on with this, is there's something wrong with this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna push this chain and black part kind of towards the center here. And lock it in place with a pin. And this is a plastic piece we'll also have to change, and of course, it's pretty straightforward. Now, one thing I just realized is since we kept the oil pan on, which I don't think you have to take the oil pan off for this to work. We're just gonna have to put some good sealant down there when we put everything back. All the coolant that comes out of the engine is gonna run right into the oil pan. So you will have to drain the oil out and fill it up with new oil. That's just something I wasn't thinking was gonna happen. Also, if you're here just to replace this gasket right here, the chain is going to have to come off to replace that gasket. So you have to take the chain off. There's no way to get it out. Dumb design as far as I'm concerned, but that's just the way this is designed. So keep that in mind. Chain has to come out. So we have to have all the timing tools. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this chain back, lock it in, go ahead and get these loose, go ahead and see if I can get everything re-timed up, and then I'll take the chain off. Okay, here is the pin in the tensioner. I just pushed this back right here. I put a little screwdriver in there. I pushed actually against the chain itself and push this forward to where I can put that pin in. Now this, oops, dropped my light here. Now you can see this chain is just super loose. Now there's no tension on it. So that's what's gonna give you all your tension to get your chain off. Okay, so now what we need to do is go ahead and get this timing chain off. First thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and just pull this piece off right here. There's two E-torques on the other side here that come off. It's pretty easy to get off here. Make sure you keep track of your bolts too, it's really important. Make sure you put them right back where you found them. I'm gonna show you something. Right there, it's broken. Okay, I didn't know that before I started taking this apart. But this right here was broken, and the other piece is down here. So this could be an issue. So we definitely need to replace this with the kit. All right, so you see now how pretty much the chain's very loose since we got the tension off of it. I still have my pin locking down my crankshaft. Okay, you want to make sure that hasn't slipped out, hasn't moved or anything. Now, once we get this chain off, we need to be very careful how we move these camshafts, because this is an interference engine. So you never want them too far off the top dead center, or you can risk actually manually bending the valve inside the cylinder head, and that's not going to be fun for anybody. So I'm going to take off this guide right here, and this guide, all this will hang loose. Then we'll time up our camshafts and remove our gasket, which is behind the chain. If you're here just to replace the gasket, you're going to have to take the chain off, because you can't get the gasket off without the chain being off. And of course, we're going to replace our tensioner and our guides and our chain. Looks like we have Torx bits, internal Torx bits there, and we have two externals here on our tensioner. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen those and take those off. Again, just remember where you got these bolts from, because you're gonna need to put them back. All right, these are T30 Torx right here. Trying to stay out of the way of the camera as much as I can. This is also why I had that red bar here that was holding the engine. I went ahead and got that out of the way, and I have the engine now supported by a jack. I did that mostly just so you guys could see, but it does give you a little bit better work area. So these bolts are super special right here that hold this in. You need to make sure that stay where they're put. I'm going to slide this down and out. All right, and you can see the grooves and everything on here where that camshaft, that chain has been riding, and the wear on there. Matter of fact, these bolts stay in, so you don't have to worry about them. Now we're going to go ahead and take the tensioner off over here so we can take this black tensioner guide out. These, I believe, are some E10 external Torx bits. Take the tensioner off. Now you want to make sure that the tensioner is locked down. Because it will have pressure on it if it's not. And it's not a good idea to take a tensioner off that's got pressure on it. Still have a little pressure on it. One of these bolts is just a little bit too tight for hand, a little bit too loose for the ratchet. While I'm doing this, I have my timing cover and oil pump assembly in the parts washer. So that'll take most all of your tension off. And you can see what I've done with this tensioner here. It's a little bit easier to see. I put that pin in there and it's kept the tensioner shut. Now, when you pull that pin out, this tensioner can come all the way out. You see there's a spring in here. And there is a little oil jacket right here. That's what keeps the pressure on the tensioner, okay? You have an oil galley that runs right into the bottom of that, and it pushes this piston out, and that's what keeps everything tight, okay? So if you have an oil pressure issue, it's definitely going to cause a problem with this maintaining tension. All right, so now this chain is real slack. Camshafts may spring a little bit. This is kind of tough because, drop my light here. We've got to work this off. There's a bolt down here that holds this in. I think it might be a T40. Yeah, that's a T40 that holds the bottom bolt to the tensioner guide. So go ahead and take that off. What you may end up having to do is move this camshaft a little bit to give you some slack. That will come off just like that. So yeah, there's a little T40 down in there. Put this off to the side. Now our chain should just pretty much fall off. Like that, and there we go. That's your timing chain. Okay, now that we have the camshafts off, I want to show you guys something real quick. You'll see right here you have this this hexagon-shaped, I guess, milling into the camshafts. Here you have one here and you have one here, and that's what you're going to use to turn these camshafts to get them into correct alignment. Now I have my alignment tool in here. This has these slots in here, and you want to turn those to where the slot comes up, and you want to slide this in, and that's going to hold your camshafts in place at top dead center. Okay, so that will be the next step. Then we're going to have to take this this gasket off down here, and I'm waiting on parts, but when we get those in, I'll go ahead and show you what we're doing with that. Right now I've got the timing cover over here. I went ahead and put it in the parts washer, got it cleaned up. I'm gonna go ahead and take this oil pump apart, check it, make sure everything's good with it, and go ahead and repack it with assembly lube. That way we're not dry starting the engine when we start the engine up here. So you just take these bolts off, checking for any wear, anything in here, making sure that the oil pump is good. If the oil pump is bad, normally we have to replace the timing cover, and this will come all together as one unit. The seal right here, we'll put another seal in. You definitely want to change that out. Make sure that your timing cover kit comes with that. We'll also need to replace the water pump seal here, and over here on the car where we took our thermostat cover off, the timing cover set will come with this gasket right here, which we just put a water pump on this car not too long ago, so it's probably okay. But I'm going to go ahead and change it out anyway since I've got the seal in the timing cover kit. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. You need to clean, once you get this gasket off right here, you need to clean all the sealing surfaces. You need to clean the sealing surfaces of the oil pan up front, and make sure that you don't have any leftover residue from the last seal. And then we just need to do a quick inspection of, so I can get it to focus here, of all our sprockets. Make sure we're not missing any teeth or have any abnormal wear on all the sprockets, including the crankshaft sprocket down there. You definitely want to make sure that your the pin, which I've got in the picture here, is still in place. It hasn't moved at all, because you definitely want that crankshaft not to move during this whole process. And so I'm gonna get this off, clean it up. Again, you don't want to use anything too crazy to clean it up. Just razor blade, maybe some fine grit sandpaper, something like that, to get a good sealing surface for all this to fit. Okay, so before we go and put the chain on and everything else, what we need to do is we need to loosen these bolts in here. And I've already done that. And you just need to loosen them up enough to where this turns, okay? And this turns. And we have a tool that's gonna line all this up, so don't worry about if it goes out crazy, okay? Because we have a tool here, and we'll have a tool here to line this up. This is what the sensors are going to read, and let the engine know, let the ECM know that the vehicle's in time. So you want to get you a wrench, put on this hexagon shape here, and get you a long pry bar and turn this to the left, and it will come loose. They were extremely tight on this car, so almost to the point where I thought I was going to break something, but they did come off, and now we're ready for the chain. You can put this on. If you have to manipulate these, and there's going to be a special procedure for how we put the chain on and where we put the tension at and the slack at on this to get all the slack out, get the timing correct, and we should be good to go after that. Okay, parts are in. We got this timing cover gasket set right here. It's got everything we need in it: our water pump gasket, our front seal, our thermostat housing gasket, and of course the timing cover gasket. You want to make sure that you put this on correctly and make sure that it is the correct one, match it up with the old one. The part number on this is TCS 46156. It's from Felpro. We also have our timing kit. It's from Cloyes. It is a 9-4311S, and this is the whole set. So it should have pretty much everything we need in it to put the timing chain on. We have this, our timing guide at the top. This is the part that was actually broken on the other one. It was an orange part, different color plastic, maybe it'll be better. We have one of our timing chain guides, and we have our tensioner guide right here. So we'll need to take the bolt out of this one and put it back in. Timing chain, of course, man of the hour. And we have a bottom sprocket here. This is going to fit around the crankshaft. And we have our tensioner, which actually already has what we call a grenade pin in it. So we'll just leave this in it. We don't have to use the one out of our special toolkit. So this is pretty much what you're gonna need, plus your cleaning supplies, plus you're gonna need a thing of silicone. It don't have to be this big. We just get them this big because we use them a lot around here. But this is gonna be for sealing the corners and the edges of this and your valve cover gasket when you go back on. So I recommend the Ultra Black, Permatex. It works pretty well, seals up pretty good, and works in all kind of temperatures. Here's our clean timing cover. I put this in a parts washer, and I'm gonna do it again actually because I got some of this gasket material that has ended up inside here. So I'm gonna run it one more time and dry it off and make sure it's perfectly clean going back in. But I have gone over all sealing surfaces from the water pump and the oil sealing surfaces with a conditioning disc. And if you don't have a good conditioning disc, this is what I use here. It's an OEM Tools brand, and it's got the aluminum disc on it. This is for aluminum pieces. This is really good for tight corners and things like that. But if you don't have one of those, good piece of sandpaper will work. Emery cloth, even if you don't have any of that, even go to the kitchen and get your Scotch-Brite pad sponge that you use to scrub your dishes with, and just go over this and make sure that you get all the old gasket material off of here, because if you have any of that old stuff on there, it's not going to seal, okay? You want to go ahead and hit your water pump up as well, and you want to get around the bottom where your oil pan seals to this. You're going to want to clean that up as well. You can see right here, this has this little gap right there, and that is full of silicone. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out as well, because that's what actually seals this oil pickup area right here. This is your oil pickup and goes directly into the oil pan. And we'll go ahead and take a seal tool, pop this out, and go ahead and pop the new seal in. Okay, so we are about to put the gasket on here, but we need to do something first with our silicone that I told you we're gonna need. In between the engine and the cylinder head, engine block and the cylinder head, we're gonna need to put a thin little bead of silicone right there, because through capillary action, oil can leak through that little slot there and cause oil leaks at the corner. So we take our silicone here and we cut the tip off. And what we're gonna do is you're just gonna put it's about 2 millimeters thick bead right there at the block and head sealing surfaces. I would also put it at the corners of the gaskets here at the bottom, because that touches the oil pan. So I would put a little bit right there as well. Just to make sure that it's sealed up. Not much, just a little bead. And we're going to slide this gasket on the dowel pins where it sits. Kind of go up below the camshaft and come back down. You just want to apply some pressure Now you definitely want to put this on before you put the chain on, because once the chain is on, this ain't going on, okay? So next step is going to be us running the timing chain. Okay, so got the new chain. We're going to take the sprocket off the bottom here. Since they sent us a new one in the timing kit, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. So it just slides off. It's slotted. It fits in there a certain way. So you can't really get it wrong. There's no timing mark on this anyway, so even if you flip it upside down or whatever, it's not going to matter. So now with the instructions, it says to put the chain on the sprocket, and then we are going to slide this in. The thing about timing chains, they're not like timing belts. They don't bend or flex too much, so they pretty much have to be put on just right. You keep a little tension on it. Like that. Move this in. And like that. Now you'll have a lot of slackness, but remember, we have our cams locked down by that tool in the back, and we have our crank locked down. So we'll figure out where the slack goes here in a minute when we put the tensioner and the rails back on. All right, we're gonna go ahead and bolt our tensioner back up. Guys, you have to excuse the background noise. I have an active class going on right now, and it's finals week, so everybody is studying and getting ready to do their finals. So we'll put this on. And we're just gonna tighten these up real quick. There's a torque specification on these. I'll get it in a second, and we'll torque it. All right, so the tensioner bolts are going to torque down to 15 foot-pounds. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put on the tensioner shoe. Take it out of the box, tensioner shoe. Now remember, you have to take the bolt out of this. This is a T40. Move this right here. Put the timing chain on the other side of it. And this T30 at the bottom will also torque down to 15 foot-pounds. Make sure the chain is riding on this piece. Make sure it's seated fully. Looks like this is almost kind of pinched in here. So we're going to make sure that it chain is riding in the center of that. So you got to be careful here. Good thing I noticed it. You don't want to derail this chain. There we go. That's sitting right. So yeah, if it doesn't feel right, you definitely want to double check, make sure it's right. That could have been a problem. We get our torque wrench. If you don't have a torque wrench, I guess just do the best you can. There we go. Now let's move on to the rest of this. Okay, now we got to install this piece on the right. Now remember, this goes into the slot. It's right here. So you kind of got to push it down and then slide it into the chain. You can push these bolts back. These bolts don't come out of the tensioner. You feel like a little click and everything goes in like it's supposed to. And these bolts torque down to 8 Newton meters. It's a T30. Eight Newton meters is about 10 foot-pounds or so. Snug them up before I get the torque wrench here. Trying to stay out of the way of the camera, guys. Apologize if I block some shots. Let me go get my torque wrench. Okay, got it all torqued down. I actually didn't start the camera until after I torqued it down, but these are 8 Newton meters, about 10 foot-pounds. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we have all this set up. Everything's in line. Okay. Now all we have to do is make sure our timing tools are in place. Our pin is installed, and we are going to pull the grenade pin. And so if it's a little hard to come out, you can press this in. It should pull out, and then all our tension will come back on our chain. Okay. So not too bad, not too hard. And now we're just going to need to make sure all this gets lined up, but we have to do that after we put the timing cover on. Okay, so before I put this timing cover back on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack this oil pump that's in the timing cover. It runs off the crankshaft with assembly lube. The reason why is I don't want to dry start this system. And you may argue with me that this isn't necessary, and I mean, I guess you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But basically, I'm taking this assembly lube right here. You can get it from anywhere. And, oops, bumped the camera, sorry about that. I'm just going to fill up the oil pump with assembly lube. And this is going to keep it from dry starting, keep any, we don't want to dry start our engine. And this will get the oil pump to prime up quick. That way we're not running our engine when we first start this dry. Because remember, this timing system runs off of oil, so I want to get oil pressure to where it's supposed to go as soon as possible. So these are T30s that cover this oil pump. I've already taken the gears out and inspected it. Everything's fine. If you have any wear in here, I'd go ahead and just recommend replacing the timing cover itself. Or if you can get the oil pump, replacing the oil pump. It's just something smart to do because you don't want to have to do this over again. I don't want to see the inside of this engine for another 100,000 miles or so. So I want to make sure that while I'm here, I go ahead and get rid of any potential problem that may come in the future. So again, you may argue in the comments that this isn't needed, this isn't necessary, this is a waste of time, whatever. However, I feel it's kind of my duty to go the extra mile for you guys and show you what I would do if this was my car. Now, this isn't my car, this is somebody else's car. But I still think this is something valuable to do, and it's only taken me about an extra 5 minutes. So after this, we're going to go ahead and slide this cover on. Remember, when we're putting this cover on, we need to go ahead and put our silicone on the bottom here where it touches the oil pan, and make sure that we're putting the bolts in. When we're putting the bolts in, they're going in the right direction as far as how long they are and where they're supposed to go. All right, now we're going to put the timing cover back on. It rests on 2 dowel pins down here. You have to make sure that you got it right in the dowel pins. Slide it in. Also made sure that you put some silicone where it's supposed to go, so it slides right back on there. Now all we have to do is put the bolts back in. One tip on this, I'm not going to bore y'all with just y'all watching me putting these bolts in, but make sure that the bolts are going in the right hole. Okay, remember over here we have our water pump bolts, and some of those go all the way through to the engine block, and those are going to be our longer bolts. They're going to be right here, 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 and here. And then the shorter bolts on the water pump will be the ones that you can see the threads in the timing cover. And the timing cover itself has longer and shorter bolts as well. And don't forget about the larger bolts that go at the bottom. And then also we have to put in the bolts that go up through the bottom of the oil pan. Okay, and you want to do that while that silicone is still wet, so you get a good squish sandwich in there to where it will seal up properly. Okay, so some of these bolts in the timing cover again are different sizes. You need to make sure that you put them right back where you found them, and make sure that each of these bolts don't go too far in. If it starts to feel funny when you're putting them in, you need to make sure that you have the right size bolt going in the right hole. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these bolts on. I'm gonna go ahead and get the water pump and the AC compressor back on and the alternator. I'll stop if I think you need to see something, but it's pretty much just the removal is just the reverse of the assembly. So just make sure you have your bolts all correctly. And these bolts torque down to 8 foot-pounds on the torque on the timing cover. Make sure you torque them kind of in a round fashion. That way you don't get one side of this torqued down too far before you torque the other side. Okay, so I want to take y'all through setting up the timing. I went ahead and put the alternator on, the AC compressor, the water pump, the thermostat housing, and all that stuff that we all, we still have to do the tensioner for the serpentine belt and the water pump pulley and everything. But before I got too far, I wanted to take y'all into exactly how this is timed up. Now, these bolts right here are loose to where this can turn. And you have these tone wheels here for the sensors. Now, I'm gonna show you exactly, because with this tool here, I've got the tool on here. This tool can actually go on a couple different ways, okay? So this is my printout here. Get the camera to focus. And the intake tool is gonna go, as you can see, it goes into the peg that's not surrounded by anything but metal, okay? Because there's another slot this can go into and it would be wrong, okay? So the bigger slot is going to be on the exhaust side cam. It's going to fit into a slot where that pin, the small pin, is to the left, okay? So it's kind of confusing. It can go on a couple different ways. Now, if you get this wrong, you will automatically have codes for camshaft and position sensor, codes and all kind of stuff. So you need to make sure that you get this right. So your left wheel, let's see. Let me get the camera off the tripod and I'll try to get a closer look here. As you see, the left wheel here, it's the slot that doesn't have anything but metal beside it, okay? And on your exhaust cam, it's the gap, and you'll see this gap to the left will be, the metal piece will be the smaller piece. And so when you're putting this on, let me get this back on the tripod here. Sorry for the shakiness. When you put this tool on, if you use the GM tool, you only have 2 bolts, but this is an aftermarket tool. Got it on Amazon in the toolkit. So you'll want to, it should just lay down in there, and there shouldn't be a gap between this and the timing cover, okay? It should be flat, okay? And then you just want to bolt this up. And what this is going to do is going to hold everything in place while we torque down these camshafts. We also have our hold tool right here that is in the place of our top guide. And it has teeth in here that hold this camshaft still, okay? So there's no tension on the chain when we're torquing these down. And also we're going to hold the camshafts down by their hexagon machine parts here. So you shouldn't have to force this down. You may have to wiggle a little bit just to get the bolts to go in, just because this isn't made that great, to be honest with you. So, and it kind of has to be tightened up a little bit across the board all together. There we go. So screw them in just a little at a time. You don't want to over torque this. I don't really think the metal this is made out of is very good. So, but you're going to tighten this down. You're going to make sure that this tooth area right here is in to the crankshaft. You're also going to make sure that in the back nothing has moved with your camshaft ruler back here, so nothing's moved. Also, you want to make sure that your pin is still in the bottom for your crankshaft, okay? And then after that, I'll show you how to torque down these camshafts. I'm gonna go ahead and put this tool all the way in. Okay, so while torquing these center nuts here, this is gonna keep everything in line. And again, when we have all the tools on here, all pieces of the tool set on here, the tone wheel lock, the cam lock, the rear cam lock, and the lock down on the crankshaft, there's no possible way this can be out of time, okay? So these torque at 37 foot-pounds plus 60 degrees, okay? So I'm gonna put my torque wrench on here. Let's see here. Let me get these tightened up so we're not spending all day with the torque wrench here. So you want 37 foot-pounds. I don't know if you can see that. 37, about like that. This is a gauge style torque wrench. It's old, but it is accurate. And now what we want to do is take our breaker bar, turn about 1/6 of a turn. So 60 degrees is gonna be, you wanna hold this right here, okay? You wanna pull down. Just about 1/6 of a turn. About like that. And after that, you can go ahead and take your tools off, even your crankshaft tool, okay? Now all we have to do, once we get the tools off, is put this top guide in and put the rest of the car together and we'll be good. Okay, got all the tools out. Also, don't forget your crank pin to go ahead and pull that as well. You definitely don't want to leave that in and crank the car. And you need to go ahead and put your plug back in where that crank tool goes. So you just have to put this top piece in like so. Line up the holes here. These torque at 8 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these torqued down. Also went ahead and put in the cam position sensors, don't forget those. Also, if this taught you anything, give me a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. You know, it's I spend a lot of time making these videos, hoping it will help somebody out, and it'd be great if y'all just gave me a like and a subscribe. I know this video looks pretty seamless, but I'm on day 4 of filming this video, so I do spend a lot of time making sure you guys get good, proper, accurate knowledge. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this stuff up. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the tensioner back on the bottom crankshaft pulley, and everything else that goes on the engine, the actuators, everything, get everything torqued back correctly, valve cover, everything else, and then we'll be ready to crank it up and see what happens. Okay, everybody, so we just have a couple of finishing touches I'm going to do after the weekend. My work is closing right now, so I need to go ahead and finish this video up. If you like the video, give me a like and a subscribe to the channel. Of course, I do stuff like this all the time. And tell me what you thought about the video. If I could improve anywhere, just leave it down in the comments, and I will try to implement that in my next videos. Also, if you watched this video and you did this job, how difficult was it? How much did the video help you or anything like that? Let me know what type of job it was for you. Also, I'm going to put the toolkit that I used down in the description of the video, so if you're interested in that toolkit, it actually worked fine for me. $41 from Amazon. I can't complain about it. So I'll go ahead and put that down in the comments for you so you can find the exact tool that I used. Also, I'm on Twitter, VK, Instagram, anything like that. Even overseas and stuff, I answer my comments. And because this is an overseas engine, you know, it's a Vauxhall or an Opel engine, this is not just in our GM vehicles, this is all over the world. So if you are watching from a foreign country that's not the United States, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And as always, guys, I'm proud of you if you did this job on your own and you were able to save you some money and have fun and get to know your vehicle a little bit better. So for now, we'll see you next time.